Hey, what's up, guys? Just want to go over some historical research data here that we came across. Thanks to Frosty, really helped me out with the backtesting process, exporting data and such. The first backtest we did, we only had about 27% of all historical exported coverage. Now I ran this new test with about 99.1% of all data exported. 78 out of 78 CSV files. Um, it says just a overall more validated data set, fix a couple bugs, patch a couple issues. So I just want to go over some of this data that we got. We'll be looking at some nuclear zones, how the framework stars work, histogram, strength, large move probabilities, and more. Let's get right into it. I'll be going through this file pretty quick. So if you want to pause at any time, feel free. Couple key things here. Mega clusters are absolute over mega pivots. We'll get into that why later. This is a big question from a couple people. Do more stars mean bigger moves? Not necessarily. And I'll explain why that is later. Same with the histogram reading. Um, Thinner shells usually mean bigger moves, whereas bigger shells or thicker shells mean price is going to stick around there for a little bit. Um, we'll get into that later too. And yeah, nuclear zones, very rare, but when you do see them, pay attention for sure. Yeah, let's get right into it. This data was also pretty much 1 year's worth. This is about August 2nd, August 1st, 2025 to August 2nd, 2026. So pretty much 1 year's worth of data will be going over. For nuclear zones, for that year, we had 472 nuclear emissions happen. And the unique emission means, think of it as singular, it being triggered one time, whereas unique nuclear zones means there was multiple emissions in that area. So you can think of it as plural. So in August 2025, price was around 22,000 on the NQ, whereas a year later, 2026, it's about 29 to 30,000, so about a 7 to 8,000 point chart. And out of those 7 to 8,000 points in a year the NQ has grew, there's only been 16 unique zones. So basically saying out of all those 472 triggers, they've all been triggered within the same zone. And there's only been 16 of these zones in a 7 to 8,000 point um, range. So it really goes to show you when they do happen, they're rare, but they also happen usually where another one previously has already happened. Go through some data here. This is very interesting right here. This one really caught my eye. So 45 minutes to an hour after a nuclear zone has been triggered, you have about a 90% chance that you're going to hit at least 50 points. About 77 to 79% chance that you're going to hit 100 points. Very interesting right here. Very interesting data here and how often do they hold? Like I said here, this blue is where it's a zone where one or more nuclear levels have happened, and then the orange is just one happening in its own zone by itself. A couple questions that I asked. Um, you can read some of the answers they gave me here. They do happen very quickly. Sometimes I've seen them pop off on a 15-minute candle, and before that candle bar is closed, it's already disappeared. So they do come up quick, but they can also stay on your chart for a day, 2, 3 days. Most of them do happen during New York trading hours, but you may find some in Asia and London, but for the most part, you're mostly just going to see them during New York. I will say if you do see one during Asia or London, it's probably a big move, a lot of volume going on. This was another question I really was interested in. Um, you can see here, seven were within 5 points of each other. 10 were within 10 points. Seven within 5 points is very interesting. I will want to add a feature later on in the indicator to where when there's two nuclear zones at the same time, at the same zone, I might upgrade that to another like nuclear zone extreme, something like that. I've seen charts where there's two nuclear zones going off at the same time, but they're in two different places. I haven't seen where they're in the same place. Obviously, there were within seven within 5 points. I just haven't visually seen those on the chart, but they have happened. Nuclear zone, the composition could be either a cluster, mega cluster, and a mega pivot. It could be a two mega pivots. It could be two mega clusters. You can see here there's a mega cluster and a mega pivot formed, which form a nuclear zone. Those are usually the highest, most point moves right there. Let's get on to this next section here. Mega clusters and mega pivots. Let me scroll down here a little bit so you can see. So out of all the data, we have about 2,050 mega clusters observation and about 6,600 mega pivot observations. So you can see it's a very large population. Of course, for rarity, mega clusters are more important. Mega pivots happen more often. Those are good moves, but when you do see a mega cluster, that's it definitely won. Over the 60-minute window, megaclusters had a median absolute maximum excursion of approximately 223 points. Whereas for megapivots, it's still a lot with 170 points. But you can definitely see the difference between clusters and pivots. Clusters also have a higher probability of reaching 100 points, about 78% versus 70% for megapivots. That doesn't mean megapivots are bad. It just means that historically, when comparing the two structures, megaclusters are for sure the stronger absolute expansion move. Get more data here. Megaclusters deserve far more attention than a megapivot, according to this context. Nice little chart here. Pretty much in every move from 20 to 50, 100, 150, 200, 300 plus points. Clusters are winning on every size. Has a much stronger hit rate as well. Over the first hour, mega cluster versus mega pivot. See, following a mega cluster, it's very interesting here. For 20 points, you get almost 100% chance you're gonna hit 20 points. Even for 100 points, 78% chance. A much higher fail rate, 50 points is probably the safe spot here. 95% chance you're gonna hit 50 points. Only 4% chance it's not gonna hit for the clusters. Whereas for the pivots, 98% chance you can hit 20 points. This is all within 60 minutes as well. Before we get onto the star levels, for the nuclear and mega big moves, when there is a mega observation, meaning there's a mega pivot or mega cluster, and there's a nuclear zone present on the chart, there was a 1.46 time, almost 1.5 times more the price will move 200 points and about 1.85 times more it will move 300 points compared to just it being a mega baseline by itself without nuclear. Now I'll move on to stars. Now, how you interpret the stars is very important. They're not simply just saying, hey, one star equals a weak move, 2 stars medium, 3 stars is a huge move. That's not how you want to interpret this. Give you some time to read over this. The median absolute move actually goes down as stars are increased. Very interesting. Lower star levels historically tend to be more expansion oriented, meaning they're trying to discover more, and a higher star level means it's very structured at that level and interactive. Neither one is better than the other. It's just telling you different things. As you can see here, movement gets smaller as star rating rises, which makes sense because when you have a 3 star or 2 star level, especially when there's a couple next to each other, price is very structured there. So price is kind of going to move slow. Whereas when you have a 1 star level or just no star framework level, price is going to want to discover through that zone and move a lot of points very quickly. 1 star, I would call it expansion. 2 star is kind of a middle ground. And 3 star is a very structured confluence area. I just want you to separate the logic of expected move size versus the actual structural strength of a 1, 2, or 3 star level. You can see here some of the biggest moves happen out of a fair value gap. Of course, nuclear would be right here. Notice how the 1 star level is above 2 and 3. It just goes back to tell you when price does come to a 1 star level, it's probably going to move from there very far, very quickly. Also, keep this in mind. I wouldn't compare the fair value gaps data to evals, megas, or nuclear. The best setup you're looking for, mega clusters. Whenever you see one of those, definitely set up yourself up for a move. Something big is going to happen after you see a mega cluster. Let's get on to the histogram strength. It's basically telling us about the relative volume, the thickness within the profile. Um, Thicker histogram shelf means more volume is in that area. Thinner shelf, less volume is there. You might naturally just think bigger histogram shelf means bigger moves, but the data actually shows us the opposite. where thinner areas are actually associated with larger moves. Meanwhile, thicker shelves show more revisits and just more time spent near them. Think think of a thick histogram zone as somewhere where the market has already done a lot of business. There's more established volume there, and price has just interacted more with those levels, whereas a thin shelf means there's less established structure there, and historically price is going to want to expand farther from those thin areas. You can see Q1 weakest, Q5 strongest. Let's go back up to here. Weakest mean like the thinnest shelf. So when you're in a example, which we'll start this replay soon, this zone here was very thin shelves. Big moves are going to happen here. Median point move off of a Q1 shelf, almost 300 points. Insane. Give you another chart coming down here. The stars essentially are going to tell you about the confluence and the structural importance at that framework level, whereas the histogram is going to tell you about the volume and distribution at these levels. Again, when you see a mega cluster in the New York session, specifically in the close, during next to the close, huge moves. 265 point median range moves. 95% chance you're going to hit 100 points when you see a mega cluster in the New York close. If you're looking for a 100-point move, or I'm sorry, 50-point move in the New York pre-market session is your strongest setup for 50 points. Now again, if you're looking for the strongest setup to get 100 points, back to what I just said, you're looking for a closing New York session move, usually followed by a cluster. And if you want 200-point moves, I believe the next one is 300-point moves, you're going to want to look for a nuclear zone. If you check out some of these top 10 most important findings, One of the biggest things for me is 3-star levels. They may look stronger than a 1-star, but that's kind of just the cover. When you actually go into detail, you'll realize if you want a bigger move, 1-star levels are more important because it's going to want to discover between these levels. Biggest surprises, biggest takeaways really. Mega clusters are historically producing the biggest expansion moves. When there's a mega structure on your chart and a nuclear level on your chart, um, those are when you're going to start seeing 300 plus point moves. The star levels, you can more so interpret it as structural confluence, not a bigger move rating. Same with the histogram. Thinner shelves, you're going to see greater expansion, while thicker shelves, you're going to tend to see more interaction and revisiting between these levels. One-star framework level, you would assume it's a weak level, but according to the new research, it's a lower confluence, but it has more expansion tied to it. Whereas 3-star level before you thought it would be the biggest move, but it has more structural confluence, but it's going to be revisited and there's going to be more interaction between in these zones. This is just the appendix. Then we got some definitions going on here. I'll go back to the chart. Thinner histogram, you're going to see greater expansion. Thicker histogram, you're going to see more interaction. Mega clusters are confirmed to be stronger levels than mega pivots. And I think the biggest takeaway is when you do see a nuclear zone with a mega zone, that is associated with one of the largest moves that we've uncovered. Here, I just want to play just a little replay so you guys can see something I found interesting last week. Now we got previous week nuclear zone up here, mega pivot zone here. You can see when price touched this level, huge rejection. This is almost 600 points within 45 minutes. So yeah, I just want to end this on a giant text note is when the structural strength that you see does not always mean it's going to be the bigger move.